Apocalypse mapped in the ancient world, the ancient Armageddon events that shaped the course of our civilization. This is on Express UK by Tom Fish. As we know, we've had various ancient eruptions, major earthquakes, tsunamis. A lot of them have been recorded in the Old Testament. Apocalyptic eruptions, earthquakes, even landslides, all contributed to shaping the course of ancient civilizations. Humans most likely first evolved, they say, in Africa about 300,000 years ago, and in that time we as species witnessed numerous apocalyptic events. Ancient societies had to survive without the ability to predict or even understand all these natural disasters, and it meant that Armageddon could occur completely by surprise. These are the most natural apocalyptic events recorded in human history, and they helped wipe certain societies from the map as well. The Eureka landslides, for example. The United Kingdom was until about 8,000 years ago a peninsula that was connected to Europe. So UK was not an island, it was just connected to Europe by a strip of chalk downs and hills, which today are dubbed Doggerland. Fishermen even today dredge up basic bone tools that were used by these Mesolithic hunter-gatherers who lived there. And by the end of the 7th millennium BC, a natural warming planet caused sea levels to rise. So those who lived in the low-lying Doggerland would have watched in horror because their villages would have been inundated by rising sea levels. So they had to, of course, leave and settle elsewhere. But one event transformed the sea's slow advance into an apocalyptic terror. The edge of the Norwegian continental shelf is an underwater cliff, and it runs for 600 miles along the Atlantic basin. And around 6,225 to 6,170 BC, this cliff actually collapsed, and it caused the dumping of an estimated 770 cubic miles of rock that was racing 90 miles an hour into the ocean. This transformed the ocean, in that part of the ocean, into a tsunami of an unimaginable power. The waves initially reached 260-foot height. They were striking the Norwegian coast at 130 feet and slamming into Scotland with 65-foot waves. This tsunami would have been catastrophic for the unknown number of those living in the lowlands, the low-lying fens of Doggerland, of course. A 16-foot wall of water buried settlements and farms under these waves. Then we have the Santorini eruption, the Thera eruption. A lot of them say that that had to do with the earth events and the earth changes and the tsunamis that took place around the time of Exodus from Egypt with Moses and the 12 tribes. The Minoans dominated the Mediterranean in that time, the mid-2nd millennium BC. The Minoans being, of course, the people from Crete. They left behind remarkable artwork, pioneered technical advances, including indoor plumbing. I've been to Eureka and I've seen the palace there. Yes, they had indoor plumbing. They also had hot water for their baths. They were heating water for their baths. Amazing. Actually, they were indoor pools. Now, the Minoans flourished as a race until one day, around 1600 BC, the Santorini, the Thera volcano, on what's now known as the Greek island of Santorini in the Aegean Sea, erupted with a force of 2 million Hiroshima bombs. The destruction would have been instant, eradicating all life on the island and swept Minoan settlements on nearby Crete away. Now, because of the fact that they did not find any human remains during that eruption on the island of Thera, Santorini, it means that they had enough foreshocks and forewarnings that they evacuated the island. They did evacuate the island, even though, so that means that the eruption that took place didn't have any victims there. So now the destruction would have been virtually instant, they say, eradicating life on the island. The life wasn't there because they had evacuated before this major eruption took place. Now, Thera eruption blasted 24 cubic miles of rock into the atmosphere, 4 times more than the 1883 Krakatoa eruption. This explosion blocked out the sun, plunging the entire planet into a period of bitter cold. Famine swept in Egypt, and as crops failed, and evidence of the eruption can even be found in Chinese written chronicles and even the Old Testament. Now, Chinese records say, well, we know let's take it this way. They even had a famine during the crop collapse of the time of Joseph, that was in Egypt, the second under the Pharaoh of the 12 tribes, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the sons of Jacob. You remember when the Pharaoh had the dream of the 7 fat cows and the 7 lean cows? So, due to that interpretation of that dream, Egypt was ready and had filled the silos from the 7 years of plenty in order to have enough to feed the populace in surrounding areas during the 7 years of famine. So yeah, we have a lot of those recorded in the Old Testament as well. Now, there were 3 suns that appeared, they say. Winter and summer came irregularly, and frosts in July. 3 suns appeared? What does that mean? Perhaps it had to do with an inbound planetary system that comes around every few thousand years. As one of the ancient Egyptian high priests explained to Solon, the lawmaker of Athens of ancient Greece, and Solon told Plato that there was a type of a planetary system that used to come around the past and will be coming around the future, wreaking havoc and earth changes. Now, Thonis and Heracleon in Egypt, between the 6th and the 2nd centuries BC. The Egyptian city of Thonis, known as Heraklion by the Greeks, was one of the ancient world's busiest ports. It was located on the shores of the Mediterranean. Thonis was considered the Venice of Egypt. It was a series of islands and sandbanks joined by bridges, pontoons, and a grand canal connecting its 2 ports. But there was a rare phenomenon known as soil liquefaction, and it would one day spell its doom. Okay? That's what happens when you have a very soft sediment and you have an earthquake. It just liquefies. Now, the heavy buildings of Thonis were built on soft coastal ground made of clay. And this type of loose and sandy soil, when saturated with water and struck by earthquake tremors, can undergo a sudden change, making it behave like a type of a sludge or liquid. And when earthquakes rocked the Mediterranean in the final centuries of the first 1,000 years BC, Thonis began to sink into the sea. So trade stopped flowing into Thonis, and at the end of the 2nd century BC, its grand temple to Amun had collapsed. The local Egyptians tried to save their city by scuppering shipwrecks as a measure against subsidence, but by the 8th century AD, Thonis was completely swallowed by the water. So, there's a lot of old Alexandria and old Egypt under those waters, those coastal waters. The Hekla III eruption, Eastern Mediterranean at the end of the 2nd millennium BC, was again a prosperous place, as we know. Markets bustling, great flourishing cities of Ugarit, Hattusha, Mycene. Mycene is, of course, in the Peloponnese, and Babylon. And the region saw a golden age of literacy and culture. But by 1100 BC, virtually every society in the area of the Mediterranean would collapse. 1100 BC, that's about the time of King Solomon and King David of Israel. Now, the cause of all this destruction was found more than 2,500 miles or 4,000 kilometers away on the island of Iceland. Hekla is one of Iceland's worst volcanoes. It's one of the world's most active volcanoes and was once considered to be a gate to hell and a prison where the traitor Judas was tormented. Hekla's most apocalyptic eruption in history took place around 1100 BC, and that event is known as Hekla III. The eruption blasted about 2 cubic miles of volcanic rock into the atmosphere, and it triggered an era of global cooling, and that lasted for 2 years. The rapid climate change that descended over Northern Europe is thought to have driven innumerable refugees to the south, placing unsustainable stress on the region of the south. That's how many people had to evacuate and flee as refugees from the climate chaos there. The climate unrest caused destruction and, of course, the sacking of cities. Under famine, there were rebellions, strife, social unrest, even outside attacks coming from those people that, of course, wanted to resettle. The interdependent societies of the Bronze Age collapsed. There was a period dubbed the Late Bronze Age collapse, cast the region into a chaos. And there was more, of course. There was even, as we recently found out from geologists and astronomers that were examining Google Earth, they had found that there was an asteroid strike about 3000 BC, about 5,000 years ago, southwest Egypt. This is one of the areas there, the Camille crater in Egypt. This was found in 2004, and another similar one was found in 2014 in Iraq, again by Google Earth. There were a number of asteroid strikes at that time in this area of the Middle East, Egypt, and various other locations, even Saudi Arabia. These scientists had gone on field trips there and found the damage that was caused. They also found that these asteroid strikes caused volcanic eruptions and earthquakes of the area. And if you look at Google Earth, this whole area is filled with volcanoes and lava flows that look as if they were made yesterday. I mean, they're so clean. And they were what caused a tremendous change in the atmosphere as well. They said that even the atmosphere of the area was boiling at the time of these asteroid strikes. And of course, it caused famine, crop failures, livestock failures, and social unrest, even up to the time of the last pharaoh of Egypt, Cleopatra, Queen Cleopatra, who tried to have an alliance with Rome in order to be protected and have their alliance. Well, that failed, as we know. And all these geological changes had an effect on the cultures there, of course. Now, the 3 suns in the sky, that was weird. And as we know, we have the asteroid strikes here in this area, and the ancient Egyptians stating that they knew a lot more about astronomy that we know today, I guess, because they knew of certain bodies that come around every once in a while. I'll leave links below for you for this. It's fascinating stuff, isn't it? If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.